Hello, everyone. My name is Charles Rozier, and I'm an outreach representative with the Michigan Department of Treasury, Michigan Student Aid. And today I'm going to be providing our Financial Aid 101 presentation. The state of Michigan, Michigan Student Aid administers scholarships and grants to Michigan students who are looking to go to a Michigan college. And today our presentation will be talking about a few different things. We'll get started with talking about different institutions to consider. So we'll talk about 2-year versus 4-year, public versus private. Also, we'll talk about the different types of financial aid. So the difference in scholarships, grants, loans. We'll then begin speaking about the free application for federal student aid, more commonly referred to as the FAFSA, which is the primary way to be considered for all financial aid programs at the federal level, state level, as well as the institutional level. We'll talk about some of the federal programs that you all will automatically be considered for when you all submit the FAFSA. Also talk about some of the state programs that our office administers. We'll then speak about the MySSG student portal account, which allows a couple of different things, and I'll go into detail about that later in the presentation. I'll wrap it up with the scholarships, talking about how students can access scholarships at the national level, state level, and local level. And then I will end it with Q&A. Thanks. Alrighty, so let's jump right in. What institutions are you all considering? There are 3 primary types of colleges that a student could consider, and your first is going to be community colleges. So community colleges generally offer 2-year programs. A student could enroll into a certificate or a licensing program up through an associate's degree. And the average cost of attendance at your 2-year colleges is going to be just under $12,000 per academic year. Now, when we're talking about the cost of attendance, that actually incorporates not only tuition and fees, but also room and board, books and supplies, and any other associated expenses. So I will always tell students you could probably assume that your tuition and fees is only going to be about half of that cost of attendance. Your next option is going to be public colleges and universities. So public colleges and universities generally offer 4-year programs. There are a few 4-year colleges that actually offer associate and certificate degrees, but there's not an abundance of those. You could also continue your education up through a graduate degree program, and that normally takes about an additional 2 years of study beyond the bachelor's degree level. But your average cost of attendance for public colleges and universities here in the state of Michigan is just under $24,000 per academic year. And some of your bigger institutions like Michigan State, MSU, U of M, Ann Arbor, those schools are actually going to be closer to $30,000 or just under $30,000. So you could expect it to be a little bit more for those institutions. And then lastly, we have private colleges and universities. And those schools also generally primarily focus on 4-year programs, so a bachelor's degree. If you wanted to continue your education, they'll have a lot of graduate degree programs as well, but they do offer some associate degrees. You're going to find more 2-year associate degree programs available at your private colleges than you would at your public colleges and universities. So next, we're going to talk about sources of financial aid. Where does the money actually come from? You have the federal government, and the federal government administers the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. That's going to be your primary way to be considered for scholarships and grants available at the federal level. You have the state government, which my office represents, Michigan Student Aid. The primary way to be considered for those is also to submit the FAFSA. And then the colleges and universities also have scholarships and grants available to students who are interested in attending their institution in particular. And many times they want to see that you've submitted the FAFSA as well. And then lastly, you have private and third-party sources. So local associations, community foundations, You may be involved with athletics, and that could potentially provide you with a scholarship opportunity. Local employers, McDonald's, Taco Bell's, you may be working part-time, and they may have scholarships for their employees. You may attend a local church that has a scholarship opportunity for you, unions, and things of that nature. So I always tell students, the more involved you are in your community, the more likely you may be able to come across some of those private third-party sources. But I will be sharing some resources where you all can search for local scholarships later in today's presentation. Alrighty, so types of financial aid. You have free money. Free money obviously doesn't have to be repaid. So your first category under the free money is going to be scholarships. Scholarships are generally merit-based, meaning that you may have to demonstrate some sort of academic achievement in order to qualify for a scholarship. So that may look like writing an essay, having a particular GPA, or demonstrating a certain SAT score. Grants, on the other hand, are need-based, meaning if you demonstrate the need for money to help pay for college, then you may be eligible for some grant funding. Next, we have earn money, and under that category is work study. So that is pretty much part-time employment that'll help you with your college expenses. The federal government actually administers the federal work study program, and it is considered to be a part of the financial aid package, and it is only available to students who actually demonstrate financial need. And then lastly, you have borrowed money. So obviously that is going to be your student loans. Student loans are considered to be a part of the financial aid award package, but do understand that loans must be repaid, and they have to be repaid with interest. So we never tell a student to accept or decline a loan. You just definitely want to consider how much money you think you'll be able to earn after college with your degree in order to be able to have a manageable debt. Alrighty, so FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. In order to get started with the FAFSA, you'll go to FAFSA.gov. But before you can actually complete the application, you will need to create what is considered a federal student aid ID, which is simply a username and a password that allows the student and the parent to electronically sign and submit the FAFSA. Alrighty. So this is what the home page of the FAFSA website looks like. If you're going to be new to the FAFSA process, you would just click start here to get started. Also, the FAFSA does list deadlines for state scholarships and grants. So each state that you are applying for financial aid in may have their own priority consideration deadline. And I'll be talking in more detail about Michigan's priority consideration deadline and which of our aid programs is associated with that later in today's presentation. Alrighty, so just some general facts about the FAFSA. It can be completed online. Again, you would just go to FAFSA.gov. There's also a mobile application. If you want to look through your Apple Store or your Google Play Store, you would just look for the My Student Aid app, and that is MY as in your, not MI like the state of Michigan. Also, you want to avoid being scammed. There are a lot of scams out there, but the FAFSA is completely free. So definitely make sure you're going to FAFSA.gov. Anything that prompts you to put in any type of debit card information or things of that nature, then you're not at the right website. The FAFSA must be completed every year. So each year you plan on enrolling in college, you need to be sure that you're completing a FAFSA in order to continue to be considered for federal and state financial aid programs. And the state of Michigan deadline for the Michigan Competitive Scholarship and the Michigan Tuition Grant is March 1st. So we do have a priority consideration deadline of March 1st. And for the 2021-2022 academic year, the FAFSA actually became available last October. So October 1st of 2020 is when that application rolled out. And that is for the class of 2021 and older. And For the 2022-2023 academic year, the FAFSA will actually become available this upcoming October 1st, 2021, and that'll be for the class of 2022 and older. Alrighty, so when you all submit the FAFSA, it is going to generate what is referred to as the estimated or expected family contribution, more commonly referred to as the EFC. So after your FAFSA is processed, you will receive a notification of exactly what your EFC is, and the EFC is used to determine the types of financial aid you may be eligible for. So it is not the amount of money that you have to pay up front, but it is utilized in a formula to calculate what your financial need is. And that formula is the cost of attendance minus a student's expected family contribution equals their financial need. And you cannot receive more need-based aid than what your financial need is. So some variables that are going to impact your EFC would be income, whether it be the student or the parents, the family size, so the number of people that's currently living in the household, the number of people that's currently enrolled in college that all lives in the same household, and then lastly, the amount paid in taxes. So for the purposes of the FAFSA, most students will be considered a dependent student, but in order to be considered an independent student, you would have to fall into one of the following categories. And that would be at least 24 years of age, if you were married, if you were in graduate or professional school, if you're a veteran or a current member of the armed forces, if you've ever experienced time in foster care, that could potentially qualify you as an independent student. If you have children or dependents of your own other than a spouse, if you're an emancipated minor, if you're homeless or at risk of being homeless, and that would require documentation. So you would have to provide that documentation to whatever colleges you were considering attending. And you could also be considered an independent student as determined by a financial aid administrator due to unusual circumstances. And again, that would also require documentation to be able to prove that situation. So you could be considered for professional judgment, and students with special circumstances may actually be eligible for professional judgment. And the professional judgment allows students with special circumstances to have their financial aid award package re-evaluated by the school's financial aid office. So again, students must inquire with the college's financial aid office to see if they're actually eligible for professional judgment. But some of the special circumstances may include a change in income or household size, dependency override due to family breakdown, and things of that nature. So for example, for the class of 2021, you're going to be utilizing 2019 tax return information. If your family's financial situation looks drastically different than what is reflected on that 2019 tax return, that may be a situation where you would want to see if you could be considered for professional judgment. Alrighty, so which parents' information should you be utilizing on the FAFSA? This little chart right here breaks down exactly, but pretty much whatever parent has custody of the student, whichever parent is providing for the student 50% or more, that is whose information you're going to use on the FAFSA. So if your parents are married to each other, you would still need both parents' information. If they're legally separated or divorced, that's a situation where you'll use whoever has custody of you. If your parent is remarried to a step parent, then you would need your remarried parent that has custody of you as well as the step parent's information on the FAFSA. If your parents were never married, not living together, again, that's a situation where who's ever providing for you for the majority of the year, you're going to want to use their information. And if your parents were never married but are living together, then again, you would use both parents' information. Alrighty, so next we're going to get into some federal aid programs. And many of these you will be considered for when you all submit the FAFSA, alrighty? So you have the federal Pell Grant, which is the largest federal grant program available for students. And I'm going to go into more detail about the Pell Grant here shortly. You have the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, more commonly referred to as the FSEOG. And this is a grant program that is really similar to the Pell Grant. Normally, students who qualify for the Pell Grant may qualify for this, but the funds are sent directly to the colleges, and the colleges actually decide the award amount and who they want to divvy those funds out to, based on eligibility, of course. You have the Federal Work-Study Program, and I'll touch briefly on that here shortly again. You have the TEACH grant. So this is a grant that is available for students who plan on going into education, but it does require that you serve in a low-income school district. And if you do not fulfill all of the service requirements around the TEACH grant, it could potentially turn into a loan. You have the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant. Not going to go into full detail about that, but you can find out more information regarding that at studentaid.gov. You have the federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loan programs, and we'll be talking in more detail about that here briefly, as well as the federal direct plus loan. Okay, so just a good rule of thumb to remember, federal grant aid does not need to be repaid, but federal loans must be repaid, and they actually have to be repaid with interest. Alrighty, so Pell Grant basics. Some general information about the federal Pell Grant. You must complete the FAFSA each and every academic year that you plan on enrolling in order to be considered for the federal Pell Grant. If you're coming from a family that's making $26,000 or less, you're going to automatically receive a zero expected or estimated family contribution, which means that the college-bound student would be eligible for the maximum amount of the federal Pell Grant funding. And for this current academic year 2020-21, the maximum Pell Grant is $6,345. Alrighty, so the Federal Work-Study Program, again, this provides a student with part-time employment to help them pay for their college expenses, and you must demonstrate financial need in order to qualify for the Federal Work-Study Program. Now, if your financial aid award letter lists that you are eligible for work-study, do understand that you're not automatically going to receive those funds up front, and you're not automatically going to be set up with an on-campus job, but qualifying for the work-study program does make you more likely or more marketable on campus, so you could potentially have an easier time finding an on-campus job. And that is because there's already money set aside to help pay you. Therefore, you're going to be more marketable than students who don't actually have federal work-study. Alrighty. So again, you're going to need to go to campus, find a work-study eligible job, and that is how you earn your work-study funds, and you can utilize it for college expenses, and those funds are sent directly to you. So they're not necessarily applied to your student account or anything of that nature. You'll have the ability to use those funds as you see fit. Alrighty, so next we're going to talk about the federal student loan programs. So you have the subsidized versus the unsubsidized loan programs. And the subsidized program is only applicable to undergraduate students, meaning that you're working on that first degree, whether it be a associate degree or a bachelor's degree, who demonstrate financial need. Alrighty, must demonstrate financial need in order to qualify for that. But the college actually determines the amount that you can borrow, and it cannot exceed what your financial need is. And again, financial need is calculated by taking the cost of attendance, which can vary from college to college, minus your expected family contribution equals your financial need. And the best thing I would say about the subsidized loan is that the government is actually going to pay the interest on that loan while you are enrolled in school at least half time, which is normally the equivalent of 6 credit hours, about 2 classes per semester, during your grace period, which is an additional 6 months after you graduate from college, or during a period of deferment, which is something that has to be applied for. Alrighty, next we have the unsubsidized loan. So this is available to undergraduate and graduate students, regardless of if you demonstrate financial need or not. But the college still determines the amount that you can borrow, and it is going to be based on the cost of attendance and other financial need factors such as gift aid you may be receiving and things of that nature. But the student is responsible for paying the interest during all periods of that loan. As soon as it becomes dispersed to the student account, it will begin accruing interest. And then you also have the PLUS loan, and the PLUS loan is available to undergraduate and graduate students. But for undergraduate students, the parent is the co-signer and the loan is in the parent's name. So they're going to be on the hook for paying that loan back. And just some general factors to consider when taking out a loan. You don't want your monthly loan payments to exceed 10% of your monthly take-home pay during your first year post-graduation. So another way of saying that is that your total loan debt should not exceed the projected first year post-graduation annual salary. So if you're going to school for accounting and you're thinking I can make about $45,000 on an annual basis my first year out of college, then you should take out no more than $45,000 to achieve that degree. Alrighty. So you do have some loan repayment and forgiveness options. You have the public service loan forgiveness, and that pretty much will allow individuals who work for public service, whether it be federal government, state government, local government, or a nonprofit that serves the public. Once you make 120 qualifying payments, you can then have the remainder of your student loan debt forgiven. Also, you have the teacher loan forgiveness program, and this allows teachers who teach in a low income area to basically teach for 5 years and make a certain amount of qualifying payments. And then at the end of that 5-year period, they can have up to $17,000 forgiven in student loan debt. And you also have the income-driven loan repayment plans. And that basically allows you to pay back your student loan debt based off the amount of money that you're bringing in. So let's say you was expecting to be able to bring in $45,000, but you actually only come out and you're making, let's say, $30,000 to $35,000, then you can actually pay back your student loans based off the amount of money you're bringing in and what some household factors will look like as well. So next, I want to talk about the Student Scholarships, Grants, and Outreach Division here at the state of Michigan, more commonly referred to as My Student Aid. So for this current academic year, we were appropriated $140 million across 7 state financial aid programs. And all of our programs are only applicable to students who are undergraduates, meaning that you're working again on their first certificate, associate, or bachelor's degree. Most of our programs are need-based, so you have to demonstrate financial need in order to qualify for the state of Michigan aid programs, but you all can find full program details, eligibility requirements, and fact sheets associated with each program available on our website at michigan.gov/MI Student Aid. Alrighty, so I want to briefly go over some of the state of Michigan aid programs. I'm not going to go into detail about all of them, but again, you all can find out more information by visiting our website. So you have the Children of Veterans Tuition Grant, and that'll provide tuition assistance to the children or dependents of Michigan veterans who were killed or permanently and totally disabled during military service or as a result of military service. The Fostering Future Scholarship provides tuition assistance to students who have been in foster care on or after age 13, and there is a separate application associated with both of those programs that I just mentioned. The Michigan Competitive Scholarship, more commonly referred to as MCS, provides tuition assistance to students who demonstrate a 1200 or higher on the SAT, as well as demonstrate financial need. The Michigan Tuition Grant is available to students who demonstrate financial need that is interested in attending a private or independent nonprofit college here in Michigan. Police officer and firefighter survivor tuition grant pretty much will waive tuition costs of students who have a parent that or spouse that was killed in the active line of duty. And then lastly, you have the tuition incentive program, and I'm going to go into full details about TIP, which is Michigan's largest funded grant program available to Michigan students. So before I touch on that, I want to talk about eligibility for all state aid programs. So in order to qualify for any of our scholarships and grants available through the state of Michigan, you must have Michigan residency, and you need to have Michigan residency for at least 1 year prior to submitting the FAFSA or submitting the application for the scholarship. You must also be a U.S. citizen, have permanent residency or approved refugee status. You have to complete the FAFSA, and you need to complete the FAFSA every year you plan to enroll in college in order to continue to be considered for state aid programs. All of our scholarships and grants can only be utilized at an approved Michigan college or university, and you do need to be enrolled at least half time, which again is about 6 credit hours on average per semester. And you cannot be in default on the federal student loan in order to receive state of Michigan aid programming. You do need to graduate from high school with your diploma or certificate of completion or its recognized equivalent. You have to maintain what is known as satisfactory academic progress, and those are institutional standards set by each college. So you would want to get with the college to see what the SAT policy is. But again, you have to maintain that in order to continue receiving state financial aid. So the FAFSA deadline, again, we have a priority consideration deadline for the Michigan Competitive Scholarship and the Michigan Tuition Grant, which is considered to be March 1st. For all of our other state programs, you just need to submit a current year FAFSA. And for the 2020-2021 year, the FAFSA deadline is June 30th of 2021. So your college order on the FAFSA is important. We only consider you for state aid eligibility at the first college listed on your FAFSA. So you can actually update your college order on the FAFSA by logging back into the FAFSA and just changing the order. You can also update that by creating our MySSG student portal account, and I'll be talking in more detail about the student portal account here shortly. Or you can call our customer care center at 1-888-447-2687, and they do operate Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to about 4:45 p.m. Alrighty, so next we're going to go into more detail about the tuition incentive program, more commonly referred to as TIP. So if you have ever had Medicaid for at least 2 years within a 3-year consecutive time frame between the age of 9 and when you graduate from high school, as identified by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, then you may qualify for TIP. And there is no special application associated with the TIP program. You do have to complete the FAFSA though, of course. You need to graduate from high school or earn its recognition prior to age 20. And for students who attend a state-approved early or middle college, they must be less than 21 years of age when he or she graduates from high school in order they can maintain eligibility for the tuition incentive program. Also, you will need to begin utilizing TIP at a participating institution within 4 years of high school completion. And all remaining benefits are forfeited 10 years after the first TIP payment is issued to whatever institution you all decide to attend. And of course, it must be an eligible institution. So TIP works in 2 phases. And first, we're going to talk about phase 1. So phase 1 will cover the cost of tuition at the standard in-district rate at participating Michigan community colleges and up to $250 in mandatory fees per semester. It'll also cover the cost of tuition at the average community college in-district rate, which is $116 for this current academic year, and up to $250 in mandatory fees at participating degree-granted Michigan independent colleges. So some of those private colleges that we talked about earlier in the presentation, if they offer associate's degrees, then you all could potentially receive up to $116 per credit hour at those institutions, and you must be enrolled in that certificate or associate degree program as well. And then lastly, it'll cover the cost of tuition at the lower level resident rate and up to $250 in mandatory fees at participating Michigan public universities. And the lower level resident rate is normally what public universities and colleges charge incoming freshmen and returning sophomore. Alrighty. So just to reiterate, a student must be enrolled in a certificate or associate degree program and taking classes within that program of study in order to qualify or receive phase 1 TIP funding. And any certification program must also be a minimum of 1 year in order for it to be eligible for TIP phase 1. And we consider that to be about 30 weeks of instructional time. Alrighty, so TIP phase 2 is really straightforward. Phase 2 provides tuition assistance not to exceed $500 per semester or $400 per term, up to a maximum of $2,000 for credits earned in a 4-year program at a Michigan degree granting college or university. And TIP phase 2 must be completed within 30 months of completion of phase 1 requirements. Alrighty, so next I want to talk about the MySSG student portal. And in order to create a MySSG student portal, students can go to michigan.gov/MISSG. In order to create an account, the student must have their social security number, and they also must have either a current year FAFSA on file or demonstrate eligibility for TIP, meaning that they already have a TIP record in our MySSG system. Alrighty, so what can students do in MySSG? Why is it so important that we encourage students to create the MySSG student portal? Students can complete applications for the Children of Veterans Tuition Grant, the Foster and Future Scholarship, as well as the Survivors Tuition Grant. You all can also receive important communications regarding awards and eligibility for State of Michigan aid programs. You all can also update the college on file used to evaluate eligibility and process awards. So again, if you have a different college listed first on your FAFSA that you don't plan on attending, you could also log into the MySSG student portal account in order to update that. You can also update your contact information. This is going to be the primary source that we have in our hands in order to contact students regarding awards and things of that nature. So it's really important that we have students' updated contact information. And then also you can view your eligibility status for our State of Michigan aid programs and view when we send out payment to the colleges. So that's really important. And then lastly, you can easily contact us directly through the MySSG student portal account. All right, I want to briefly speak to some of our resources available in our website. So we do have publications that speaks to the FAFSA, that speaks to a lot of our state of Michigan aid programs. So definitely be sure to check those out. We have detailed program information, so you can find out all of the eligibility requirements around any of our state of Michigan scholarships and grants available on our website. We link to some external resources so you all can find out more information about the FAFSA. We link to some national scholarship search engines. So if you all are interested in looking for scholarships that can be applied to any college in the country, then definitely check out some of our external resources. You all can also connect with us on social media from our website. We have our scholarship search tool, which allows students to search for place-based scholarships, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that here shortly. We also list some best practices for searching for scholarships, whether it be at the national level, state level, or local level. And also students can sign up for our MySSG student portal directly from our Michigan Student Aid website. And again, that website is michigan.gov/Michigan Student Aid, or MI Student Aid. Alrighty, so this is what our My Scholarship Search self-service tool looks like. This allows students to search for place-based scholarships, so they can select the county that they live in, and it'll actually bring up scholarships that are only applicable to students who live in a particular geographic area. So it makes students a lot more likely to be considered or win a scholarship because the applicant pool base is going to be much smaller than a lot of your national scholarships. And then lastly, again, I want to encourage you all to connect with us at MI Student Aid. We do have social media platforms. This is a screenshot of our Twitter, so definitely check out our Twitter. We have Instagram as well, and we also have Facebook. So again, you all can send us direct messages through our social media platform to get pretty quick responses, things of that nature. We also have our Lounge and Learn series on our Facebook website, and we talk about a lot of the different state aid programs in more detail, things of that nature. And that is the end of the presentation. So again, this is where we'll open it up for Q&A, and just want to let you know we appreciate you all for attending today's presentation.